Welcome back. Former Vice President Joe Biden is holding on to his lead among 2020 Democratic presidential candidates. That's according to a CNN national survey. It finds 34% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning registered voters favor Biden to take on Donald Trump in the presidential election. Elizabeth Warren places second with 19%, and Bernie Sanders rounds out the top three with 16%. No other candidate broke into double digits in that new poll.
And with that, we want to bring in our panel. Kurt Mills is a senior writer for the American Conservative and CBN News chief political analyst David Brody. David, to you first. How much stock do you put in this poll?
I don't put too much stock in it. First of all, it's a national poll, and we've seen a lot of national polls. But if you go deeper inside those numbers, it says over 50%, 53% of people might change their mind. Well, there you go. I mean, it is fluid. It'll be fluid for a while until Iowa, and then it'll all start to shake out.
Kurt, some of the latest polling shows Elizabeth Warren surging ahead. Who do you see as the front runner?
Biden. I think Biden's a weak front runner, but I think he is clearly the front runner. I'll say this, nobody thinks Joe Biden is going to win, including maybe Joe Biden, and yet he might be the primary nominee. I think the important thing to realize with the Democratic race is just how much more famous Biden is and much more established than he is than all the other candidates, with the exception possibly of Bernie Sanders, who's in shaky health and way more radical than most Americans. And I think fundamentally a lot of Americans aren't paying that much attention, and the overriding concern for Democratic voters is taking out Donald Trump, and Joe Biden's been on those, a lot of bumper stickers over a lot of years, and he seems plausible if he doesn't completely mess up.
And you think that's the case even when you look at the money race, when he has less cash on hand than some
It seems like he likes staying in hotels, and he seems like he likes lighting money on fire, and he used to brag about being the poorest U.S. senator, and he seems quite intent on spending his way back to that status. But, I don't know if it particularly matters. Like, he's got some cash on hand, and if he keeps showing numbers like this, he'll keep fundraising in spite of himself.
Kurt, what do you make of the Russia feud that's taking place between Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard and Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, I think clearly, so obviously there's been a lot of question about President Trump's judgment and fitness for office, but it's kind of a reminder of how kind of unhinged Hillary Clinton also would have been, to think that a sitting U.S. Congresswoman, a major candidate for Democratic nomination for president, her own party, is an actual asset of the Kremlin. It just shows kind of how sad Clinton's perspective can be.
On the impeachment front, Republicans staged a protest today, storming the deposition that they described as a Soviet-style process. David, their frustration seems to have really reached a boiling point.
Yeah, it's secret meeting after secret meeting here, and ultimately it's like a Harry Potter movie, right? Adam Schiff in the Chamber of Secrets at this point. Well, I appreciate that. Well, Kurt makes me up my game, for sure. No, but it's true, right? Nancy Pelosi all along said, we need to have the public behind us. Why are you going to do that if you have secret hearing after secret hearing? This has got to concern Democrats eventually. They may be getting some, quote, good stuff, but if the public doesn't know much about it, or it's their way, in other words, the Democrats spitting this stuff out, it just feels messy right now.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's moving too fast, David, and that could be a problem for Democrats.
Yeah, look, I think they got to do this by Christmas. Good luck on that, by the way. I think this is going to spill over to January 2020. They may do it then, but if they do it then, I think it's somewhat of a political death knell for them.
Well, on Syria, according to a Newsweek poll, President Trump is losing support for his handling of Syria. Kurt, how much of a problem do you think this is for him politically? What are some of the implications here?
I think it's a problem for him in this city, in Washington, D.C., and I don't think it's a problem with the folks out there, broadly speaking. I think it's telling, given all this unconventional things that Donald Trump has done as president, as a politician. It was this move that drew the sort of supermajority rebuke last week on the Hill. The Republican leadership in both the House and Senate sort of abandoned the president. But I think when the president goes up there and he talks about soldiers coming home without limbs, wives receiving coffins, and talking about endless wars, I think that resonates both in the Republican Party and nationally.
David, Republicans we saw this week also broke with him with his comment about this impeachment inquiry being a public lynching. A lot of them, there were a few exceptions, but a lot of them said they didn't support that language. Are we starting to see Republicans kind of back away from President Trump?
Well, I think that Donald Trump needs to be careful here. I mean, if impeachment goes down this road, then he's got to start counting some votes in the Senate. They're nowhere near the 20 that they need, 20 Republicans that will ditch him. But you still don't want to play with, that situation. But on the lynching thing, by the way, as we talked about yesterday, there was a Joe Biden video, as we saw today, back in 98, when he was talking about lynching, and he had to apologize for it. So, once again, kind of a Joe Biden gaffe, even, 20 years later. So he's gaffing throughout the years. It doesn't matter.
Kurt, we know that you're a man in the know. What is the project that you're working on now?
I mean, as much as
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, nothing. As much as I'd like to distract myself from it, I think the election is going to overlay everything, and I think there's clearly, I'm a foreign policy person by inclination and training, but I think clearly there's foreign policy. There are electoral consequences for every decision from now to November, and we were kind of talking offset. Like, it just seems like it's going to be a death march to next November.
Who among the Democratic field has, in your view, maybe outside of Joe Biden, because I think it's a little bit unfair, has the strongest foreign policy chops?
I mean, look, Sanders has tried to build this is somebody who's obviously anti-establishment. Right. He has done a good job in the last 4 years really staffing up and trying to raise a conversation about where America should go. I think the major candidate with the weakest right now, we know almost nothing about her foreign policy, is Elizabeth Warren. And I think so the question with Warren generally is, has she peaked too early? Okay. And is she how is she going to handle being a target, which if the last debate is any inclination, she is now a target.
All right. Kurt and David, thank you both.
Thanks, guys.